All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and our latest set of BCBA exam practice questions, where we're going through these questions together and breaking each one down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. As always, check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including practice exams, study guides, and our combo pack. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout-out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Joseph uses an application for all his data collection and data storage. The application creates graphs for Joseph to use when designing and assessing treatments. Joseph will look at the graphs and consider trends, variability, and changes in levels before making decisions. What type of analysis is Joseph doing? So we're looking at what? We're looking at Joseph and his analysis. So what do we know about Joseph? Well, we know Joseph uses an application for data collection and data storage. A lot of companies now use these softwares and these applications where you can input your data, and what's going to happen, the application will create the graph for you. Very convenient, great for sharing with stakeholders, great for analysis. And so Joseph uses these to design and assess treatments. He looks at trends, variability, and changes in levels. So Joseph is clearly looking at the graphs, looking at the data, and then using that data to guide his decision making. So when we're doing that type of analysis, what is that called? A, parametric analysis. What is a parametric analysis? Parametric analysis examines the dosage, right? How much of an intervention do we need? So if we were to say identify differential reinforcement as our primary intervention, and we want to know, well, how much reinforcement do we need? We might conduct a parametric analysis, right? 5 tokens versus 6 tokens versus 7 tokens. It's not what Joseph is doing here. What about a component analysis? A component analysis breaks down a treatment package and it examines each individual treatment within inside that package. Again, Joseph's not doing that. He's looking at the graphs. He's looking at the trends, the variability, and the levels of the data paths. Is he doing a functional analysis? Well, with the functional analysis, Joseph will be manipulating antecedents and consequences to determine the function of a behavior. He's not doing that either. What Joseph is doing is called visual analysis. And that's our primary method of analysis in single subject and in ABA when we're looking at line graphs is visual analysis. That's one of the great things about line graphs is it makes visual analysis very straightforward and very simple. And so Joseph, by looking at trends, variability, and changes in level on these line graphs, he's conducting visual analysis. Assuming you are using an ABA reversal design, where would the verification portion of baseline logic take place? So we're asking about verification of or in baseline logic. And in baseline logic, we're concerned with prediction, verification, and replication. Prediction says what? Prediction says our baseline will continue to look the same if we weren't to intervene. Verification says what? Verification verifies our prediction of baseline. And then replication does what? Replication reproduces our intervention. And so if we're looking for verification in baseline logic, what are we trying to verify? We're trying to verify our prediction of baseline. And so we have this ABA design. A being our baseline, B being intervention, A being our return to baseline. And so if we're looking at verification, where are we looking? Well, A is going to be our first baseline. So we're going to collect data and we're going to identify a baseline where they're going to predict that if we don't go to B, baseline will continue as is. So when are we going to verify that baseline prediction? Well, in second baseline, which is A. So where are we verifying verification, more or less? A, in the first baseline condition. In the first baseline condition, our prediction takes place, right? We're predicting our baseline. B, in the first intervention condition. We're not verifying the baseline in intervention because that's not possible, right? Now, in the second intervention stage, we're going to replicate intervention, but where are we going to verify our prediction? Well, C, in the second baseline condition. A, we make our prediction in the first baseline. In the second baseline, we verify that prediction. So where would the verification portion of baseline logic take place? Well, C, in the second baseline condition. Jessie designs a research project in which she will examine the use of video modeling in parent training. Jessie recruits 4 participants and instructs the participants to record themselves implementing a reinforcement procedure. Jessie then has the participants watch the recording and asks them to provide feedback on the delivery of reinforcement. She then has them do the same procedure several more times so she can track any changes in the reinforcement procedure. What is the dependent variable in this scenario? So we're looking for the dependent variable based on the information given. And so we have independent variables, right? And dependent variables. What is our independent variable? Well, that's whatever we are adding or taking away, whatever we're manipulating. The dependent variable is what we're measuring, typically the behavior. So what behavior is changing? So if we're looking for the dependent variable, we're looking at what are we measuring? What is changing? What is affected by the independent variable? So we know Jessie is using video modeling in parent training. She takes 4 participants. She asks the participants to record themselves implementing a reinforcement procedure. Okay. Jessie then has the participants watch the recording, provide feedback on the delivery of reinforcement, and then she does this several more times so she can track changes in the reinforcement procedure. So based on that information, what is being manipulated? What is being added to this? Well, what is being added is either the recordings and the feedback of their own delivery. And what is Jessie measuring? What is changing? Well, the reinforcement procedure. So the behavior of implementing the reinforcement procedure. So the changes in the reinforcement procedure are dependent upon the video modeling and feedback. So where is our dependent variable? Well, A, the reinforcement procedure. That's what we're measuring. That's what's going to be changing. And it's dependent on our intervention, the manipulation, or in this case, Jessie's, which is the video recordings, and then the feedback. The video modeling, the parent training, the feedback are all possible independent variables, but we're not measuring those things. That's not what Jessie's trying to change. That's not the behavior we're measuring. What we're measuring is the implementation or the changes in the reinforcement procedure itself. The most difficult part of the day for Mr. Franklin, an 8th grade teacher, is when his students arrive in the morning. They are still distracted, tired, and it is difficult to capture their focus. Mr. Franklin decides that he will allow the students 10 minutes of rest or time on their phones first thing in the morning because he thinks this will solve his problems. What goal of science does this most closely resemble? All right, goal of science at the very beginning of our task list. What are the 3 goals? Description, prediction, and control. Description is the lowest level. We're simply describing a phenomenon. Something is happening, we're talking about it. Description would be Mr. Franklin describes his students when they first arrive as distracted, tired, and unfocused. He's describing a phenomenon. Prediction is now going to be a hypothesis. We're going to assume a correlation or try to identify correlations. What is Mr. Franklin doing here? Well, he's saying they're distracted, tired, and unfocused. If I give them 10 minutes of free time, like rest or time on their phones, what's going to happen? Well, it's going to solve my problems. Mr. Franklin is hypothesizing a correlation between free time and solving his issues. He's making a prediction. So what is C? Control. Well, control is actually going to be following through with that experiment and trying to identify a functional relation. If Mr. Franklin follows through with this experiment, takes data, tracks changes, and realizes he's having an effect, or his intervention is having an effect on the student behavior, then he will have established a functional relationship. He would have established experimental control. So again, A, description, we're just describing a phenomenon. B, prediction, we're making a hypothesis, we're assuming correlations. C, control, we're actually experimenting, manipulating, and identifying any functional relationships. All Mr. Franklin has done here is predicted a correlation between free time and his students' focus and lack of distraction and removing of tiredness. So what goal of science does this most closely resemble? Well, B, prediction. Frank the Tank swore off drinking beer 5 years ago and puts his college years behind him. However, last weekend, Frank's 2 friends from college came in town to visit him. Frank ended up drinking several beers with his friends and then regretting it the next morning. How would you describe this scenario in behavior analytic terms? So the key is we have to use behavior analytic terms here to describe what's going on. Frank the Swank swore off drinking, right? He put his college years behind him. However, his friends from college came in town to visit him, and what did Frank do? Well, he drank several beers. So what happened? Frank's behavior changed at some dimension. Okay, he drank several more beers than he has in the last 5 years. And what changed in the environment was friends. And so when behavior changes in the presence of a stimuli, or in the presence of stimuli or a stimulus, what do we consider that? A, Frank went through spontaneous recovery. Have we talked about extinction at all in this scenario? We haven't. So we don't know how Frank changed his behavior initially, and we can't assume anything without more information. So we can't say he went through spontaneous recovery. We're not even sure if there was extinction in the first place. B, Frank's friends have stimulus control over Frank. This is the most likely scenario. It's most likely that Frank's friends being present has changed behavior. That's what stimulus control is. Behavior changes in the presence of a stimulus or stimuli. C, Frank lacked self-control in the moment. Well, we're not going to say he lacked self-control, right? Self-control would be a hypothetical construct, and if we said the reason he drank beer was of a lack of self-control, we'd be using an explanatory fiction. We don't want to do that. And then D, Frank has stimulus control over his friends. Well, his friends' behavior didn't change. Whose behavior changed? Frank's. So in the presence of his friends, Frank's behavior changed. We can say Frank's friends have stimulus control over Frank. When is it acceptable for a parent, who is also a behavior technician, to work with their own child and implement behavior interventions? I put this question in here because the BACB recently sent out an email clarifying parents who are technicians and what that means for working with their kid. And essentially what they said was, you can be a parent, you can be a technician, and you can still receive parent training, obviously, and you can still implement programming with your child. What you can't do is become their technician in a professional sense, meaning you can't bill hours, you can't work at a company and be their technician on their case. You can only act as the parent who still happens to be a technician. So when is it acceptable to work with your child and implement behavior interventions when a parent is also a tech? A, parents are always allowed to work as the behavior technician for their child. That's just not true, right? We have to avoid multiple relationships. If you become the technician as the parent, we now have a professional and a personal relationship crossed over. It's not allowed. B, parents are never allowed to implement behavior interventions for their own child if the parent is also a behavior technician. Again, too strong, because parents, even if they're technicians, can receive parent training and can still implement procedures. They just can't act professionally as the technician. So C, parents who are also behavior technicians are allowed to implement interventions as part of a comprehensive plan that includes parent training. In this case, the parents, even though they're technicians, they're only implementing interventions as part of parent training. They are not acting professionally as the technician, and only then is it allowed. Your client enjoys playing with the farm animal set they received for Christmas. The client will grab the toy cow and say moo moo. One day, you're flipping through a picture book with the client, and the client spots a cow in one of the pictures. The client says moo moo. What type of verbal operant is this? All right, basic verbal operant question. What are we looking at? Well, we're looking at the client saying moo moo in response to spotting a cow in one of the pictures. Now, how do we start to identify our verbal operants? We'll first start with what evoked it. If we have a mand, that would mean a motivating operation evoked it. If we have attacked, that would mean a nonverbal stimulus evoked it. Echoics, intraverbals, we have a verbal stimulus. Textuals, transcriptions, also these verbal stimuli. So, in this case, the client saw the cow and said moo moo. The cow, the picture of a cow, is a nonverbal stimulus. So it's got to be either attacked or a mand. And we don't have mand here, so it must be attacked. Not an echoic because the client isn't copying anyone saying moo moo. It's not an intraverbal because the client isn't responding to a verbal SD. And it isn't a textual because the client isn't reading anything. Simply tacting cow by saying moo moo. Excellent. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. Let us know when you pass so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.